Men, if we're honest, we're always searching for purpose. And I think that commitment to fatherhood is the epitome of that.
In this day and age, as a man, it's very easy to be really selfish and think like, I just live my life, do my own thing. But it's like that moment of what I want becomes third.
There's two people in front of you who you would absolutely, without a blink of an eye, lay down your life for. Not only my daughter, but her mother, because her mother is more important to her than me. When people talk about fatherhood being the making of a man, I think it's that transition to that level of commitment, love, and service.
Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Welcome back to another episode, this very special episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers. I'm coming to you straight out the recording. This episode with a friend of mine, Fidel, past guest, men's coach, man who is further on in the journey than me. And we talk about fatherhood. We talk about a lot of the wisdom that he has from his experiences. He'll go into that, of his kids, of fathering them. And we talk about, my experience of entering in a little bit there, but also talking about really the wisdom he has for me, the lessons he's taken from his journey for fatherhood. We talk about, the understanding of fathers who aren't there for their kids. Some of the traumas of birth. He goes into some of the details about that. We talk about that experience of men often feeling like they're left out, they're the third wheel in the relationship. And we talk about the role of the father and why it's really important for fathers to be there. And, some of the not so much the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's more the things that maybe go unnoticed or unthanked. Fidel really talks about his experience there. And he talks about divorce dads and the process of divorce and the importance of kind of showing up. We talk about, commitment and how important that is, leadership and masculinity in the area of fatherhood. So it's a really beautiful episode, and one, it's really heartfelt. You're going to really, there's moments where we both get quite emotional talking about our experiences, particularly his experiences. Really, really beautiful episode. So, you'll probably listen to this. The chances are when you listen to this episode that are me and also my partner, if you've listened to past episodes, baby is just probably pretty soon, just after being born. But yeah, so he'll be out in the world, but you have to listen in, as I say, at the end of the podcast, in a couple episodes time, maybe talk about some reflections and my experience of that, the birth and the labor and all that kind of jam. But this is the perfect episode for a new father or father who's, considering fatherhood or entering into, because you get to hear someone who's, thought a lot about entering in, and you get to listen to someone who is, all Fidel's kids are in their 20s, almost in their 20s now, but they're adults now, and his reflections and how it feels to have his children be leaving as well. Really important conversation around that. But I will let you jump into episode. So without further ado, I'll let you jump in. Welcome, listeners, back for another episode, a special episode for a number of reasons. One of these reasons is that we've got a guest who's kind of back for the second time. I always remember Ludacris's first album, Back for the First Time, when I have to say anything about people being back. And a wonderful man, he's been on a podcast before, and out of that, we became friends and we spent time together. And there's always a lot of laughter as well when we spend time together, but also a man I really look up to. You know, he's a little bit further on in his journey of life. And also, you know, someone I look up to and seek advice on, because he's could call it that. We have today the wonderful man that is the kingmaker, Fidel Beauhill. How are you doing today, Fidel?
Oh man, I'm doing better after that intro, even if you are going to call me an old man, but yeah. Thank you for that very, very nice intro. It's cool to see you again, man. It's been fun trying to get this together, haven't we? We've both been backwards and forwards in inboxes, and but we finally made it happen.
Yeah. It's playing that diary tennis, it always happens.
Yeah. Honoured to be back, my man. Honoured to be back.
Yeah. And as this episode will actually, you know, I'm telling the listeners, because you'll listen to this episode, by the time that this episode's come out, listeners, the thing we're going to talk about would have occurred in my life. But at this moment, it hasn't occurred yet, because it's just before that, which is the thing called fatherhood. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, or you've listened to past episodes, you know that I'm about to enter into this portal, this new realm of life, which is fatherhood. And, you know, I put up a story a little while ago, and Fidel reached out and was like, let's do a podcast about it. And I was like, yeah, man, let's do it. Because as I'm entering into fatherhood, Fidel is on the other end of the spectrum. Your girls are all almost of age of just completely being free and independent.
Yeah, my youngest one is going to be 18 in October. The other two are 24 and just turned 21. So yeah, she's just turned 24. Yeah, the oldest one's just turned 24, and the middle one's just turned 21, and the youngest is 17. So she's driving. She passed a driving test, bought her a car. So I don't see them anymore. Do you know what I mean? They're gone now, you know. So yeah, it's a very, very strange time. And I think when I saw your post or your story talking about fatherhood, and obviously I've been keeping an eye on you and Ursa's little journey over the last few months of expecting. Really excited for you. Me and Leanne have both been really, really excited for you, and it's definitely made me philosophical about that. And I think a lot of feelings have come up for me as my kids have kind of grown up and just moved a bit further away from me. You know, it's an interesting thing, right? When I turned 18, I found my mum at the bottom of my garden with a bottle of champagne and a one-way plane ticket, right? And I was like, what? And she was like, no, these are for me. And I was like, what? And she was like, yep, you're the last one. I've got 3 older brothers. I'm the youngest of 4 boys. And she was like waiting. There's a bit of a gap between me and my younger brother, my brother above me. And she went off to Brazil. She was like waiting to be free. So I kind of had this model, for some reason, that has just been implanted in my head, right? You just wait until your kids are 18 and then you're free, right? You do your best, you put everything in, you slave away, you do this job called fatherhood or whatever. But then when they're 18, you get your life back. And I hadn't realized I'd been carrying that model in my head. And I'm like, yes. Like waiting for my kids, not wishing it away at all. You know, I love my girls, and I've been a very kind of, I've been heavily involved in their lives forever, you know, the whole way through. But there was definitely part of me that's waiting for this second thing to happen. Like when the girls go away, I'll get this freedom. But I'm actually finding it tough, you know. Like I'm actually like I really miss them. I spend time looking at photographs of them when they were little, and like reminiscing and romanticizing as well, right? Because you only have the pictures of when you got to the destination. They were all smiles and happy. You don't hear all the squabbles in the back of the car and the mess and the sick and the pee and all of this stuff, and the 10 times you have to stop at the services, right? You kind of forget all of that stuff. And so I've just been sitting with that for a while, man, and it's been an interesting internal journey to get to this bit after so long. It's been a long time being a dad.
Yeah. And has it been surprising to you that you that this has been the feeling that you've come to now, and it's not the celebration you might have hoped or expected?
100%. But all of that has caught me by surprise, because I think a lot of that stuff, the freedom part, was going on subconsciously. It wasn't really in my forethoughts. I hadn't really realized it was there. Do you know what I mean? But there was definitely that model, and I definitely, weirdly, like I had plans for it. I was like, right, then I'll be 18 then I can go off and spend a lot more time abroad and do all this sort of traveling and everything else like that. But it was definitely this idea, this concept that I would be free, in quotation marks, right? I would be free from the shackles of fatherhood. And listen, it's not true, right? My kids still need me. They need money. And stuff like that. But no, they don't. I mean, I say that they don't need me at all, and that is an odd feeling. Like, not on that constant basis. Obviously, they need me. I'm their dad, and they love me, and I love them. But that, to do everything for them, to fix it. Now they come to me to fix stuff, but it's the big stuff. So yeah, it's very strange and quite wistful. Empty nest syndrome, I think they call it. But I think that's mainly applied to women, isn't it? Usually.
Yeah, it's usually kind of thought to mothers, I think, applied to. But this, as you speak of this being not needed, so I guess for 18 years and 20 years and 24 years, you have felt needed and important. I was speaking to one of my clients about this actually, with the work they were doing. He's like, his thing we discussed was like feeling important to somebody, because, when I imagine your experience when you're little is like, you're the most important thing to them. And as they get older and older, slowly you kind of experience this importance of being less and this needingness being less, or the obvious stuff like, changing nappies disappears after a few years, and then being taken places. And now, as you said, they're driving themselves where they want to go and do the things they want to do. So this kind of important, this thing where you felt direct feeling of like being important and being needed starts to kind of wane and get lower. And then I'm hearing you're reminiscing about the times when you were more needed and more important to them.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to use a different word. I'm going to use useful, because I think, listen, as a man, like, our value is always how useful we are in the world, right? And how helpful and useful we can be to our community and to our family. And when you say I was the most important, I certainly wasn't. I was very much aware that I was the second most important, right? We're the second most important from their mums, right? And it's like the mum's most important. She's the grounded one. She's the food, right? She's the nurturer, the this, that, and the other. As a father of most of my life, you kind of feel like a bit of a butler, right? You're a chauffeur, you're a baggage handler, you're the bouncer, close protection officer, you're all of these other things, but you're kind of secondary. But that's cool. As a dad, that's it. That's your role. You're just this useful person that comes in and fixes the stuff and makes the stuff happen. It's largely kind of unthanked. Do you know what I mean? A little bit, it's kind of just becomes expected. And all of this you kind of moan about a little bit while you're going through it. Well, like I said, as you come out the other end, it's odd, because now who am I of use to? Right? And I guess it's a bit like when men retire. They have that same thing, that loss of identity a little bit, like, what am I without my job? When a man meets another man, it's like, oh, great, what do you do? It's the first question we ask of another man. What do you do? What use are you? Right? Essentially is what we're asking. And so to have such a big part of my usefulness now redundant, there's a part of me that is unfulfilled, for sure.
Got it.
Which I didn't see coming. I didn't even give it any thought, which is quite odd for me. But yeah, I hadn't thought it would feel this way, and I think I'm still processing it. It's fairly recent. The last bit was my youngest daughter getting her car, right? And so now she's obviously, I've been through a divorce with her mum, so she doesn't even stay here. She doesn't have to stay here anymore because she can just drive herself backwards and forwards. As she was much older, I think one of the reasons why I saw her so much was that I used to drive her to and from work and college and all of that sort of thing. So I saw her, and then in order to make that part easier, she would stay here with me, and everything else like that. But now she can drive herself. She doesn't really stay here anymore, which is fine. You know what I mean? It's cool. But yeah, I've had to give her a job now. So I get
to keep her around.
Really? Yeah, for sure. So I can keep her there. Yeah, it's quite funny. But it's fatherhood is a bit of a task, for sure.
No, go on.
I think fatherhood is a bit of a thankless task, like I said, it's that secondary position, right? It's the backstop, the goalkeeper. So it's important, right? It's a critical role, but you're not the centre forward,
Yeah.
Mum is the centre forward, but you don't win the matches unless someone's there stopping the ball going in your own net. And that's literally what I feel like fatherhood has been for me. Others might have a different experience, but certainly for me, it's been, I think the biggest example is when you go to the airport, right? And I just feel like a pack horse whenever especially when the kids were little. It's like you're carrying all of the suitcases, you're pushing the trolley, you've got a bag in your hand, in your teeth, you have two hanging off your ears and one under your arm, and you're pushing the trolley and with a wiggly wheel and all of that. And it's just and you've got all the passports and you're trying to get off, and they're all having fun. They're all on their holiday, right? So I mean, they were like, yay, daddy, ooh, holidays, airport, yay. Do you know what I mean? But you're like, right, got the plans, got the ticket, you're ringing up, making sure the car's parked, making sure that everything's sorted out at the other end, checking the hotel, doing all the stuff, enabling the fun, and they don't notice it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's what you're there to do. You're there to make all of those things happen as if it all happens by magic. That is part of the role. That's how I saw it anyway.
Mm-hmm. And hearing you say that, you said you're not the striker. It's like two things that kind of come to my mind as you describe the role of fatherhood as you've experienced. Is like, you're like a defensive midfielder. You're not winning any. You're very unlikely to be winning like Player of the Year because your role is kind of thankless, and you're just kind of tidying up and you're sweeping up and picking up loose balls and spreading the play a little bit. You're not even one of those like dynamic defensive midfielders. You're like a Makelele. That's the one. Makelele, getting the ball, spreading it. No one's going to give you any real
an Italian defensive midfielder. It doesn't get more boring than that, does it?
And then as you talk as well, what I hear is this real masculine role as father of structure. Like all the things you said is like, lifting, carrying, providing structure, enabling of the enjoyment and the fun. But it's often the structures, the things that, we can provide as men in our own lives, and masculine energy bring to our lives. It's kind of, it almost goes unnoticed to people. People see the fun energy, the energy at the end, or the performance and the holiday, but they don't think about the like millions of phone calls, like researching all the different hotels. Are they baby friendly? Are they child friendly? Do they have stuff to do so that all the structures are in place so that everyone can actually enjoy themselves and have a great time?
For sure. And paying for it as well, right? That used to kill me.
Yeah.
Taking 3 kids away on holiday in the summer holidays, right? It's no joke because the family room is only for 4 people. So you'd have to either hire a villa or they're all inclusive hotels and this, that, and the other. I think the other difference, I think, for me, and one of the reasons why that role was what it was for me, was obviously I'm the father of daughters. Yeah, so I've got 3 women. It may being the father of a son or sons might be a very different experience in terms of whether you're the centre forward or not. I'm not sure. But certainly you're right. That was my role, was to provide that structure so that my three little feminine beings can go off and float around, right? And be their best selves in sparkles and unicorns and everything, right? They're not interested in that dad stuff, you know,
Mm.
or even like how you get it. You don't, here's the difficulty, especially with daughters. And I've had this conversation with my current partner because I think she looks at me kind of funny. She didn't have that experience with her dad. So she also kind of wonders about how spoilt maybe my kids are, especially my youngest one, and those sort of things. And I know she's not, right. She's a grafter. She's got three jobs. I've never had to wake her up for work. Do you know what I mean? She's working for me now, and she's been amazing. She just slotted straight in. She's picking up the phone. She's chasing debts and all of this sort of stuff, right? She's bossing it, and I'm very, very proud of her. But she plays the helpless one when she comes to her dad, right? That's the dynamic we have, and there's something to be said for teaching your kids the importance and how hard I had to work in order to make all of this stuff happen. But there's also a part of me that doesn't want to pop that bubble, right?
Hmm.
It's a little bit like telling them that Santa doesn't exist. I don't know. Or like explain, actually, some of the times when I paid for this stuff, I was on my ass, right? It literally almost killed me working this hard to make all of these things happen. Like I almost I don't want them to know that. It's not necessary. Do you know what I mean? For them to know that. I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
Do you feel if they were to know that, would that change how they viewed you?
I'm not sure. Don't know. I'll ask them. I'm not sure. And in some ways, it's almost irrelevant, right? Because what matters to me is my image of myself as a dad, right? I think that's kind of what I'm talking about, is my image, my self-image of how I am as a father. I mean, I'm sure they have an idea of me as their dad, and that's one thing. But I guess what helps us to sleep at night is our own knowledge and feeling of ourselves, and whether we're up to our standard of fatherhood. I think in certain departments they probably would feel that I was lacking in certain bits of it, and there were other parts where they really appreciate, and they see me properly. But yeah, but now they're adults, it's going to be interesting to start having these sorts of conversations with them as they become more capable of having those conversations, like out of teenage and into adulthood.
Yeah. The inevitable kind of, they go to therapy and they talk about dad and what dad did and dad didn't do, and then you're like, they come to you and they're like, I was talking to my therapist and I wanted to talk to you about something, and you're sitting there thinking, oh fucking hell.
Listen, like doing the work we do is a very strange experience, because you hear yourself parenting and seeing yourself parenting, and it's like watching a slow-mo car crash or something like that. It's an out-of-body experience. Because, hey, listen, 100% I talk to my daughters. I never to speak to my clients like that, and like if they tell me they say things like that to their kids, I'd be like, oh, you're giving them limiting beliefs, but it's like I remember doing a Facebook post after having a conversation with my daughter. She was upset about something. So I don't know whether it's something to do with a boy or whatever. We were going out for dinner, a little dad date with her, just two of us. And I was like trying to get her to reframe her situation, and she was just like, I hate having a life coach as a dad. I just want to be upset. I want to be angry. Like, I want to be this, that, and the other. Why are you trying to make me happy? I don't want to be happy. Do you know what I mean? And I get it totally. Like, and it was me trying to therapize her. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't. There is those two roles are slightly different. They're never going to see me as that guy. They don't see me as that guy. Not yet anyway. They see me as dad, like, yeah, when I try and do all of that stuff with them, they want me to leave them alone. And also, it's a valid point, right? Sometimes it was unsolicited coaching, right? Which we know is not a good thing to do anyway. It's what I was doing. I didn't ask her whether she wanted to feel better or about it or differently about it. I just launched in because I saw my daughter in pain, and you want to immediately fix that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, purely for my own interest, I want to rewind you back, almost 20 years to like the beginning of fatherhood for you.
Yeah.
How did it feel to like have these, maybe your first or second, but maybe you can look at the different feelings across the three. Like, what did it feel like to be, and knowing you were entering into that they were about to be born, almost like the stage I'm in now where, we're a week or so away from due date. Like, do you remember how you felt?
Yeah, totally. So some disclaimers coming up, I guess. We have to frame it correctly. My eldest daughter is actually my stepdaughter. She has a good relation. She has a relationship with her dad. But I'm still a very special person in her life. She's 24. I still see her all the time. I still send her money. We still chat on the phone and stuff like that. And we're very, we have our relationship still, and I call her my daughter, right? So I wasn't there for her birth. It came into my life when she was 3. I was there for her 4th birthday. So she's been in my life that long, so, for 20 odd years. What I've never had is what you guys are going through now. What I've never had is to plan and decide to have a child with somebody. Both of my children came by surprise. One I was very happy with, so in a deep and committed and loving relationship, the baby. But the oldest, my first child, wasn't. She was. I met her mum in Spain, and we had a relationship, and she fell pregnant. Wrote me a letter. This is how long ago it was, right? And I did the right thing. Told her to come back to England. I would get a house. I dropped out of university, and got a house, and tried to make a home and stuff like that. But she came to Bristol then, so she was pregnant and in Bristol, and then as the pregnancy progressed, she went back down to Bedfordshire where her mum and dad live. And yeah, it was exciting for me. Like, I was dying to meet this little being. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember being really, really excited in these moments. But there was some distance. I had to be in Bristol because I was working. And I remember getting a call that she started having contractions and stuff. And I had to get from Bristol to Bedfordshire, right? And it's a nightmare journey. I believe it was on a Friday as well, actually.
Oof.
We were having this conversation. I think she was born on a Saturday, so it was a Friday evening, right? Rush hour. I had to drive down the M4, around the M25, and up the M1. Absolute nightmare of a journey. And I got to the M1 and it was just roadblock. And her mum was phoning me going like, I'm having contractions, my water's broken. I'm like, like that. So I just went into the hard shoulder, just belted it up the M1 in the hard shoulder. Sure enough, flashing blue lights behind me. They came and I was just like, I don't have time for this, guys. My daughter is being born here. You can hear her mum screaming on the phone. I was like, and then fair play to them. They escorted me. They went, all right, we'll go past you. We'll keep the lights flashing so no one else pulls you. And they drove me all the way off to the exit.
Wow.
When I got there. And it was a very long labour. And also, I remember being really badly treated in the hospital, actually. They almost didn't want to let me in. And in fact, during the whole process as a dad, I was completely disregarded, right? It wasn't, they were like, why are you even here? What do you want? Like, I felt like a bit of a nuisance. But I wanted to be involved in my daughter's birth. And actually, it turned out to be a very traumatic birth. And that's something that has stayed with me a long time. She had to be born with the forceps. She came out and her head was all funny, and I was really angry with what was going on. But again, they were just kind of shutting me out. They weren't listening to me. They were just ignoring me and doing their thing. And I remember like demanding to know what was going on, to be explained. And they didn't do any of that. I was furious. So that whole process was very, very traumatic, the actual birth. And she was whisked away for a while to make sure she was safe and everything else like that. But when she came back, it's a magical moment, right? I don't think anyone would ever describe it as anything different. And I remember being very struck. Again, as a dad, I think this is something quite specific for a father, that you go 1 minute, you are the most important person in the world, right? In your life, you're the most important person, to being the third most important person, right? There's two people in front of you who you would absolutely, in an instant, without a blink of an eye, lay down your life for. And that is a very, very, very strange feeling. It's like not only my daughter, but her mother, because her mother is more important to her than me. I would die for them both in an instant. And like when that realization hits you, that's deep, man. That's deep, really deep. And that's why I think when people talk about fatherhood being the making of a man, I think it's that transition going from being the like all you've ever really got to worry about. Listen, there's people you care about and this, that, and the other, and you got your friends and your mum and everything else like that. They mean something. They're all important, but really, like, there's nothing compares to that level of kind of commitment and love and service, right? Which I think is the epitome of masculinity, right? That is what we do. That is leadership, right? It's sticking your head above the parapet. It's going first. It's being prepared to take all of the risks on behalf of those who you are responsible for. And that hits heavy, man. It's a both beautiful and weighted feeling. Right? It's both scary and elating at the same time. Exciting, beautiful, fantastic, lifts you up, but also sits on your shoulders. You know what I mean? You're like, shit, okay, now shit's got real, right? I'm not living for myself anymore. I've got to provide. I've got to step up. And that those thoughts kind of go through your head during the pregnancy, but when the little baby is there in your hand and they're so tiny and so helpless, and so reliant on their mother. This was the other bit that hit me. So reliant upon their mother. It's like, damn, it's not just the baby, right? It's her. It doesn't even matter my feelings for her. This thing means the world to me, and she needs this other person. Right? Therefore, they're two in the same, right? I'm actually welling up talking about it. Actually, it's quite interesting.
I almost felt quite emotional, you know, when you said, when you said, the moment you realize that, you know, your life's not your own and you become the third person, and that's a weight. Like I really felt like, oh yeah, like you know, a lot of people have told me this because I've asked people, but I really, you know, as you said it there, I really felt this like, oh, there's a whole new sense of responsibility, a whole new sense of feeling. You know, because it's so easy, I think, in this day and age as a man to be it's very easy to be really selfish and think like, you know, I just live my life, do my own thing. And even in a relationship, you know, like we're very independent people. And, you know, as much as, you know, and I agree with you, as much as it's like, oh yeah, I love Orsa, I put her first. It's like, a lot of my choices are, and her choices are like what I want or what she wants. And, you know, there's a lot of overlap, so we're okay. But it's like that moment of, as you described, it's like, what I want becomes third, you know, what I want becomes the third thing. And, you know, I've had a few men describe this to me in the beautiful way that you have, and then actually tell me about a flip side to it, which is like this sense of feeling incredibly left out for a long period of time, especially the first kind of 3 to 6 months, a number of men have described to me.
Yeah, I haven't had that, and a lot of men have described that to me as well. This almost like, and I expect they'd say it through gritted teeth, but if they're honest, the kind of jealousy part, right? All of a sudden, you're not getting your sex anymore, and you're not being looked after anymore by the woman. And I think part of the thing for me, especially in that first relationship, is that we hadn't had all of that time together beforehand. Do you know what I mean? Like we hadn't had this big long relationship for years or whatever, where I was the most important person to myself and to her, right? Do you know what I mean? Right? And I had all this stuff. So I hadn't had that, right? So I didn't really have anything to be jealous of, or like I wasn't missing out on any, I hadn't lost anything. It was like all of a sudden in my life now there was just these two people who I loved very much, right? And that was just fantastic. And I gave my all to that little kid. I spent as much time as I possibly could. It was a difficult time because me and her mum didn't actually get on that well. It turned out, it was stressful. Our relationship was quite stressful. It's one of the very few. I think I've had two not not great relationships in my life, and that was one of them. Unfortunately, we just weren't a good fit, and we discovered sort of in the wrong way. uh, and also, the second thing that happened to me was I had glandular fever quite early on. I think when she was about 6 months old, and after that, I had post-viral fatigue. So I was really exhausted. But it also, what that enabled me to be was to be there for her, because I wasn't very well for a few months, and then in the end I managed to get back to work. I started working on the doors at night. I was all right at night, weirdly, and so I spent my days looking after my baby, and that was really, really nice for me. I did everything with her. She slept with me, bathed with her, and everything. We had all those real intimate moments, and even her mum, they both moved back to Bedford, I think probably when she was about 18 months, which was heartbreaking, but necessary. But I think those first 18 months and the way that we bonded has definitely been part of the reason why we still have the relationship we do, even though we lived so far apart. And I killed myself for her entire life, making sure I stayed in her life. I did that drive every other weekend, there, and back, right? I would spend 7 hours, it's 7 hours round trip. So I did 14 hours of driving to spend 36 hours with her, twice a month. And even when I moved to Spain while she was young as well, when my youngest was born out there. So she must have been 3. There's 3 years difference. And I used to fly twice a month back to Bristol, hire a car, drive down to Bedford, drive back again, spend the weekend with her, drive her there, drive back, get on a plane back to Spain.
Wow.
So I committed to our relationship, right? And I'm so glad that I did that. And I stayed in life, as small as it was, right? I don't know many men that would have done that. And I don't know whether she actually even appreciates that. To be fair, I don't think she quite gets. She's on the spectrum, right, as well. So she's quite an interesting character to deal with. So I don't know whether she fully gets the level of commitment, but I do. So this is what I'm talking about, right? My sense of fatherhood, right? I did that, and I'm very grateful because I know her because of that. Like, I know her well. Because of all that time we spent either in the car or when she was a tiny baby. So, like I said, that commitment I didn't take lightly when I held her in my hands that first time as that tiny baby. My commitment was that by hook or by crook, I'm in your life, right? Forever. That's it. I'm going to see you. I'm going to know you, right? I think that was my real big thing. I'm going to know you and you're going to know me, That was a big thing for me, for sure.
And that piece there about I'm gonna know you. That's an interesting phrasing, almost, isn't it? It's like why I say this is like it's almost. I feel this very similar thing. I haven't had my baby yet, but like, I had a conversation with my little sister's got a little boy, my nephew, 4 years ago, and when he was born, we didn't know his father very well. They'd been together for a little while, but she's very secretive in her way, my sister. And we hadn't always been close, to be honest. And I had a conversation with her partner, which is quite funny because it later got misconstrued as me threatening him, which I didn't. I just said to him, very clearly and very honestly, I was like, look, I don't care about your relationship with my sister. That is of no consequence. If you guys are together, great. If you're not together, whatever, right? But as long as you are there for your son and you spend time with your son and you can show up consistently, me and you will be completely cool. Like, that's all I ask for. I guess I did say, if you don't do that, then there might be a problem, because that's what I expect of you to do. And I said that to him coming from, there's me, my three sisters, and none of us really know our dads. My two younger sisters, their dad is obviously still alive, but they have very distant from him. My dad, again, very distant from my dad. And the same with my older sister. And I said that to him really purely coming from that place of like, I want this to stop here. I want this like fatherlessness to stop here and now. And I will do what I can to do that, by having this conversation with him. And it's also kind of how I really feel as well, like about my son who's going to be born. Is there, because I know that, you knew your father, you grew up around your father and so forth. What was the impulse for you that was like, I'm going to know you and I'm going to be in your life? What was it? Can you remember, or if you think about it now, what was your impulse to be like really about that kind of sentence there?
I think that I had modeled, like my mum and dad split up when I was 6 or 7, and my mum moved me to Bristol and my dad stayed in London. I remember my dad being quite upset about that because he had just bought a house around the corner from us in Brixton, around the corner from my junior school, and he did that to be close to me. And I think I only really got that as an adult. And I think during the pregnancy, I had a time to really reflect on the model that my dad was. And he moved back to Jamaica when I was 16. So he did what he had to do for himself, and it's interesting to have these conversations with him now. But my dad was he was there. I saw him every other weekend. I put the hard yards in for that. I had to get on a National Express coach every other weekend from Bristol to London. I will never go on a coach again, and I never have done. Got on a coach since. I've got PTSD for coaches. That's hard no from me. But my brothers as well, right? My brothers are fairly similar to me in that they've had difficult relationships with their children's mums. But they have always shown up for their kids, and they still do. Even though their kids are all adults and stuff like that. My brother a couple of years older than the middle one, 3 older than me. His boys are all like, he's going to get the other one's just come back from China and stuff, and they're both living with him now, right? They're close to him, they're there, and it's because I've seen my brothers do that stuff. I've seen my oldest brother show up for his kids in a way, same thing, flying backwards and forwards and all of that sort of stuff. So I've had good models for that, I think. I don't know, but it was deeper than that. I guess I'm justifying it consciously now you've asked me the question. But I think it was just something quite innate in me that you just want to be a dad. Why wouldn't you want to be a dad? This is important. Like, it's the most important thing in the world, right? There is no other job that is more worthy, right? There's no other kind of it gives you a total reason to be. It's everything a man is looking for in his life, right? This is why I don't understand dads that don't show up. It's like men, if we're honest, we're always searching for purpose, right? That's what guys like me and you are here for, right? We help guys find that deeper meaning. We help men find that purpose. We know what it's like when men don't have that, right? And when they're feeling a bit rudderless and a bit lost and stuff. And I think that commitment to fatherhood is the epitome of that. Like I said, to be put to use, right? There is no greater usefulness than to show up and be a dad in someone's life. How, in whatever shape or form, like, we're not all great at it in many ways, financially or whatever, but you can show up. You can be there. You can be someone that they know is their dad, and they know you. They're not just a photograph or a distant memory or a vague, or like somebody who just turns up every now and again and throws sweets at them and takes them to the park. Like, you have a real relation. And a lot of women speak to me about, they worry about how their ex-husbands are going to show up now they've got divorced as a dad. Is he going to know what to do? And I'm like, listen, dads actually post-divorce, a lot of dads come to a whole new realization of parenthood when they do it as a single dad, as a divorced dad, and they have their kids on their own. And they're not just the fun dad that sees the kids for a bit, puts them to bed at night and has fun with them on a Sunday, right? They actually have to take them to school, and they have to deal with the screaming and the crying. They have to find the dirty knickers and realize that the bloody homework and it's mufti day or whatever, right? And you haven't bloody remembered, and now you've got to staple some paper together and make a crown, right? All of that horrible stuff. That is just as important, right? The rubbish stuff, the dealing with that mundane bits. Those bits are what really make a relationship with your children, I think. And I think that's what I meant when I'm saying to know you, right? Know all those sides of you. It's important.
Yeah. And it's I guess I reflect on like my dad when you think of like dads who haven't shown up. And it's funny, my dad called me the other day. I was in the car with Orsa driving back. Actually, literally 3 days ago, he called. And I told him that she was pregnant probably 4 or 5 months ago now. And his message was something along the lines of like, about time. I don't know what you've been waiting for, something like that. And we were in the car today on the Sunday driving, and he called and I was like, hey, how you doing? You're right. I said, I'm just driving. And he's like, okay, cool. And it's funny because he kind of like started the call off with, oh, so you stayed at my place during Christmas? I was like, yeah. He's like, was there a leak then? I was like, no, there was no leak. And I thought that's really, as he was doing, I was like, that's a really strange way to start this conversation, right? About a leak. But I was like, I'll just humor this leak thing. And then he got on to like, oh, so when's the baby due? Where you living? I was like, I'm living over in Chigwell. And he's like, is she living with you? And I thought, she. Instead of asking me like, oh, what's her name again? I can't remember her name. They haven't met yet. That's probably also part of the point. But I haven't spoken to my dad for like, my dad lives part in Jamaica, so he's kind of really in and out. And I wonder, and I've never had this conversation, I wonder if I was to say to him, do you feel you showed up as a good dad and, was there, what would he say? Because I imagine that he would say, yes, I was there. But from my perspective, he doesn't know me and he's never known me. Like if someone gave him a quiz about my life, 50 questions about what happened in my life, I think he would do really, really badly because he just wouldn't know any of the details of the stuff that happened to me or the things I enjoyed or liked. Like, what did David do with his summers when he was 16 years old? My mum would be like, he played cricket. He'd hung out with his mate Imran and he played cricket a lot. My dad would probably be like, he might guess at something, but he never saw me play cricket. He never saw me play football. And I wonder if some of the dads delude themselves into believing they're doing a good job and then they're not really there. And with the divorced dads, something that I've observed with him, because my dad's I got a brother who's 17 as well. And after speaking to his mother, what I noticed, what I pieced together was like, my dad's relationship to his children is very much based on his relationship to their mother. So when I was 8, when up to 2 years of 8 years old, my mum didn't remarry or anything like that. They were never married, but she didn't have anyone else. But when I got to about 10, she remarried. And at that point, I saw him drastically less. It's the only thing I can make sense of that happened. It's either that or he met I got 2 younger brothers that aren't the youngest ones. It's either that or he met their mother around that time. But there's definitely a marked difference from when I remember seeing him maybe like once a month or twice a month to seeing him like once every 3 to 6 months for pretty much went through my adolescence. And I always wondered with him whether it's like, because my mum got remarried, he felt like he didn't have a place in my life, or he felt some animosity towards her, and it kind of reflected on me. And I've never had the conversation with him. I never really got into it with him yet. But it has struck me as, you say about your model for fathering was good. And I've always been really aware that my model for fathering has a big like vacuum hole in it on multiple levels. And I've really strived to observe like, men like yourself who like really went out their ways and like read about it, talked to the guys and friends that I have to be like, oh, I want to really strive to be and do differently.
I think it's interesting that I said that I had good models, because in some ways I didn't, right? My dad didn't leave a massive hole. Like I had to catch the coach, right? And this was one of the reasons why I drove down to get my daughter, right? Because my dad never came to pick me up. He came to Bristol like 3 times the whole of my life. And sometimes I would get to Victoria bus station at night in winter and I'd have to wait for him because he was late from work. So that sort of stuff hurt me, right? So he did leave a hole. And I think when I was younger, I was quite angry at him for that. But I also know as an adult that my dad felt tremendously guilty about it. And they kind of, I think as a man, you start to understand those complexities of relationships and new partners and how they might put the squeeze on, and how the part that my mum played in keeping my dad away and taking me away to Bristol, and how that might have made my dad feel. And it's like, you know, that old NLP saying, right? He did the best that he could with the tools that he had, because his demonstration of fatherhood was not so good. So in his mind, my dad will think that he did a great job, that he tried his best, even though when I was 6, he didn't really know me at all. And the parts that he didn't want to know me because I was bad, right? When I was a teenager and stuff like that, he didn't want to know me. He didn't want to ask, right? Because he wouldn't know what to do with it. There was a point at which when he moved back to Jamaica, I went back with him with the idea of like maybe taking me to Jamaica, that whole thing, like that would straighten me out. It didn't. I lasted 4 or 5 months, and I came back with a bloody with inner soles and the bottom of my suitcase all lined with weed. That's how bad I was, right? So it didn't change me. Do you know what I mean? And like I hope my dad don't listen to this now, because I'll still catch a beating. But like I don't know. I look at him now, and I'm grateful to have him back in my life, you know. And we've sat down and had some conversations about it, you know. And I don't hold, like, my feelings about it are mine to sort out, and I have done that. Right, so it's really nice to be able to speak to him finally. I think when I tried to have those conversations with him before, I wasn't in a healed enough place, and there was still quite a lot of blame and quite a lot of anger that was pointed at him. And it's like, look, Dad, I can feel angry about the situation and stuff, and I can have hurt without pointing it at you, right? You know, without it coming between our love and our relationship, you know. And I think we've had some really interesting conversations this last year since he's been back, and that's been really cool. And I feel closer to him than I probably ever have done now. And I think as he's gotten older, he's worried. You know, he has worried, and he's wanted to fix some of that stuff. And dad guilt is real, right? And again, my perception of me being a good dad, right? I expect my daughter, especially my eldest one, she will probably feel very differently about that. She will probably say that I wasn't there enough, and I don't know her, and I wasn't there for her that much. Do you know what I mean? Because I was only there every other weekend. But she will never appreciate what it took for me to be there for that, and all the stuff I took off her mum as well, like to get there. And like 7 years until she got into a new relationship, she made it very, 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 very difficult for me, if not impossible. I slept in my car outside her house a couple of times, like, because after coming back from Spain, because I was half an hour late. She's like, "Now you're late, you can't see her." I'm like, "Well, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I've come here to see my daughter. Like, even if it's just for half an hour, even I can just take her to the park. I'm staying." So my daughter will never remember that, and her mum probably will never tell her that. So that's just stuff that goes into the ether. Only I know that in my heart, you know. It's probably the first time I've ever really spoken about it either. So yeah, you do some of it for yourself, but the dad guilt is certainly there for me. You always think you can do better, I think. Not all, again, not all men feel like that, but I think some of us do.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, one of the things I'd love to do actually at some point on the podcast is get someone on the podcast who has no relationship with their kids and has just kind of left them to one side, just to see and hear that part of the equation. Because, you know, most of the men I've spoken to who have kids and on the podcast are really involved, really committed to being involved in their lives, like yourself. I guess a question I have.
We mustn't think the women. There's a lot of women out there that make it very, 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 very difficult for dads to see their kids too, you know. And I know that, like I said, that was definitely my case. 7 years. I look back at it now, it seems like a small amount of time, but when I was in it, it felt like forever. It was really, really difficult. So I think a lot of guys just aren't up for that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just, and I don't know that I can blame them. But there are some dads just don't care, right? They're just not ready for fatherhood. No, they're not that committed to it. But you'll realize that I think they would also have those same feelings in different areas of their life, right? Because they don't understand commitment. They're not that guy, you know?
Because yeah, what I really feel from you is this like really steadfast, unshakable commitment to your children. Like, you know, when you speak about it, like, you know, sleeping in the car and being like, I don't care. I'm here to do the thing I want to do. That's good for me. That's good for them. And like, nothing's wavering me through this. I will stand in the snow out here, you know.
Yeah.
If I have to stand at home for 8 hours to see my child in the morning, then that's what I'll do. Like, no small excuse, no difficult relationship with their partner is gonna like skew your desire to spend time with your kids, with your daughters.
Correct. And I think that's the epitome of fatherhood, right? And I think that's masculinity as a whole. I was asked the other day about a word that would sum it up, and for me, it was commitment, right? Choosing your commitments. But when you say to do a thing, right? People say I'm not the best at that, at keeping my word. I haven't been historically, but internally, when I'm committed to something, that's it. That's how it is. That's how I show up. It's just steadfast. It's relentless. I will see it through to the bitter end. And the most important thing you can do that with is fatherhood, right? To be a dad.
And I guess one of the lessons it sounds like for you've taken from fatherhood is commitment. I wondered if there was any other kind of big life lessons you've taken from your journey in fatherhood. But I know it's a big question.
So many, so many. Humility is a big one. That thanklessness, I think, is a big one. Because I think, again, I'm the father of daughters, right? And women are quite critical in general. Like, I think a lot. Do you know what I mean? I tell you a funny story of, I think boys and girls are different, right? And you see that from young. I've got nephews, right? And I've seen them from when they're little, and their behavior and everything else like that is just completely different. And so you really learn humility and that thing about doing something for the sake of doing it, not for what you get from it, right? You do get something, right? You get a sense of pride in a sense that you're fulfilling your commitment, right? That's it. But there's no external validation. Like I'm saying, the sort of the gratitude and the thanks and stuff like that. Maybe it will come one day. Maybe it will come one day in the same way that I am now. Look at my dad very differently, and probably didn't have that for him when I was younger, right up into my 20s and probably mid 30s, right? But that I do now. I have a lot of respect and time and appreciation for what he did put in. Maybe it will come later, but maybe it won't. So there is that thanklessness to it as dad. Right, you just do the thing, you pay the stuff, and that brings a very real important lesson in kind of the reasons you do things, like why things are important. Do you know what I mean? And that bit that a lot of men talk about, right? That no one cares, right? There's this whole thing. There's a lot of it. It was seeped out of the red pill thing. Actually, nobody really cares about a man's strife, right? No one cares, and that's where it comes from. I don't bleat on about it in that way, but I get that sense. Like, it's like there was a lot of moments there where you're just like, damn, what's this all about, man? I'm out here killing myself doing all of this stuff, and the kids were all just like, yeah, but mummy, like, So that there's a lesson in there. And in the commitment, but I don't know. I'm also very grateful I'm very grateful. I've learned a lot from my daughters, and I look back at those memories of them and watching these little people kind of turn into adults. And I'll tell you another lesson actually that I was thinking about the other day, the compound effect, right? People talk about compound interest. So you do things consistently over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it starts off little. You don't see nothing. You don't see nothing. You don't see nothing. And what happens with kids is exactly that. You say something to them over and over and over and over and over, and I'm talking for like 13, 14, 15 years, right? And you can't understand why it's not going in. You're like, are you not here? Like, I've said this to you for 15 years. And then one day they turn around and you hear them say it to somebody else. Mm. When they're 17, 18, 16, 17, 18, right? You see them demonstrate a certain behavior and you see them act in a way, right? And you're like, damn, there it is. It did. It went in. So I mean, I taught them something of value, and now I see them out in the world being a good person, right? And I know that some of that is because of what I demonstrated and what I said. And I think that's the biggest thing. My kids are good kids. They're good people, man. Do you know what I mean? They're generous, they're kind, they're loving. You know, they're not perfect, but they're good people. And I think I'm getting emotional again, right? That's it. That's all you can ask for, right? My kids are good people. They're out there in the world. They're helping others. They're doing the right thing. They're being kind. They're being generous. You know, that compound effect. It was all worth it to see that come out in the end. But it's a long grind. You know, I didn't know that. And I guess that's what I'm going to tell you now, right? That's the biggest lesson I can give to you is don't stop doing that stuff. It will pay. It's a long grind. It's a long game, right? Parenting is a long game. And you see that when they suddenly become my 24-year-old now, like she's got a dad, relationship with her dad and her mum. But there's stuff that is pure me, right? That stuff that I taught her, right? And that she would have only picked up from living in my house and being around me. And I'm like, oh, this kid isn't even mine, like, you know, and she's doing some beautiful stuff that I know has come, this philosophy, this way of seeing things, this way of doing things, right? It's stuff that I've imparted to her. And that's it. That's what you get. That's what you get for all those hundreds of thousands of pounds. Let me put it bluntly, like, you know, all those years of sacrifice, blood, sweat and tears, sleepless nights and everything, right? That's the pleasure, and it's worth every bloody penny and every minute.
Yeah. Wow. It's really beautiful, right? Because it really hits you like those, you know, and I think as I hear you say that, I think of, I wonder, like almost, it's almost tempted to like send this to my mum when it goes out. And ask her about this very thing, because I imagine for her, like she really sees it in, you know, me and my sisters and stuff. Yeah. That like the things that she continually told us, that she was like drumming into us like week after week, month after month, year after year. And yeah, that's that payback. That's the thank you. That's the thank you at the end that you see like, like you said, the long game, it's like a career of like you've been building for many, many years, and you trust, and it's faith. There's like a huge faith in it. Like there's no instant gratification, but there's faith that all of this is going to like come through for them and for you in some way.
And for the world, right? For the world.
Yes. Yeah. Like
to put a good person out into the world, right? To contribute to the positivity that's out there. That is legacy, right? That is legacy. It's not about money. It's not about anything else like that. It's like, listen, there's this good person came from my seed, and I left behind, and I'm dead now, but there's a person out there. She's a good person, right? She's a good person. She's a net contributor to the positive in the world, right? She's not a drain. She's a contributor. That's it, right? That for me is legacy.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of it. I never thought about that in that way. in that kind of like real context, as you said, like net contributor to the world, making the world a better place, making other people's lives better, and being a good human being in the world.
That's it. It's as good as it gets, but it is really good. Like, I don't know, I don't want to diminish it by saying that's it. Like, it sounds small, but it's not. It's a really good feeling. That sense of pride and accomplishment that comes from seeing that is powerful, man. For real. It is. And don't get me wrong, it's not nothing all the way up until then. Like, you do get glimpses. Like, don't get me wrong, I say I'm looking at these photographs that come up on my like Google Photos and stuff like that. It's a beautiful thing, right? Every day I get sent, and it's like, because they don't just do 1 year, they go 8, 9, 10 years back. Do you know what I mean? It's like, God, on this day 9 years ago, and there's these pictures of me with my kids, and just these little tiny little moments. I'm really grateful for that. It's a beautiful thing about modern technology, how it delivers me these memories. Like, and I send them off to my kids. They get bored of them. I'm like, look at this. Remember this? Like, this was me and you, me and the dad used to go every year. I used to take them to the caravan. Their mum didn't want to go. And I used to get the little son £10 holidays or whatever. They were my favourite holidays because I couldn't afford nothing else, because I used to do the big summer holiday. And I used to take my two. We used to go away every year and to a little caravan or whatever. You know, the big bag of 10p's or 2p's so they could go into arcade machines and stuff. And they used to moan about it to start with, but they loved it when they were there. They won't do it now. They won't do it now, which is really sad. But they did it up until they were like 11 or 12 or something. And those things, man, those little moments, and you see them both together, and like that, yeah. You have your moments as you go through it that keep you going, right? That keep you ticking along, for sure. So appreciate them while you're in there. That's my advice. Appreciate those moments. Take lots of photographs, man. My mum's got all the photo albums, those old photo albums. She's like, oh, it's not the same anymore. But I'm like, yeah, but my photo albums literally are there every morning. They come back to me and they go, hey, this is 8 years ago today, 9 years ago. And it's nice. It might be on my device, but it's good. There are gaps, though. There are gaps. Because obviously my kids, when they were really little, camera phones went out. Mm-hmm. So there are gaps. There was this weird little window where we took photographs on a digital camera with where you had a little memory card. You had to put those in and download them and all that stuff. So there's a gap, and all of that stuff got lost on PCs and stuff that don't exist anymore. So yeah. Take lots of photos, man.
Yeah. What else? What other, what wisdom can you impart on someone who is, you said there, like, appreciate the moments, take a lot of photos. What other wisdom do you have to impart?
I think that point I made earlier is quite a good one, isn't it? Like, the one piece of advice was what my brother gave me. He sent me a text message, I think the day after my eldest one was born, and I can't remember. It's out of a poem. It might be Spike Milligan or something like that. I think it's one of them guys. And he said, "You're gonna fuck your kids up. Your job is to do it as little as possible." There is no better advice than that, and really to keep that in mind. You're going to mess them up. They're going to be on a therapist's couch, right? Moaning about it. Your job is to make sure they're not there for years. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right, you're going to give them some stuff. Just try and minimize the damage. So, it is a game of damage limitation, Like, you're not going to do it perfectly. Don't beat yourself up about it. I always operated on the basis that I did less about telling them what to do and stuff like that, and I really, really focused on demonstrating, of being the type of person that I wanted them to be, and being the type of man that I wanted them to be with. Does that make sense? Like, just Completely. Watch me. I'm not going to tell you, but I am going to live in a way, and that's when I say I'm seeing my kids grow up in a way, especially my younger one who's got this work ethic. I had no idea she was going to be like that. She was a nightmare at school. She was that typical teenager, and now she I always worked right from when I was a little kid. I worked hard, and her mum is the same. We're both grafters, right? We both work. And I didn't think she was going to be like that. But I've watched her just go, all of a sudden, as soon as she went into the workplace, she dropped out of school, she just went straight away. She applied for all these jobs, got a job, pretty boring jobs. But like last week, she worked 7 days.
Wow.
4 of those days, she did a double shift. right, in 2 different places. So she started at mine in the morning. She started at mine at 8 o'clock, finished at mine at 12. Then she went there from 12:30 till 6 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Didn't moan. No, didn't have to tell her. She just done it all herself, getting paid. She's grafting, and she's got a little business out in the back garden doing nails, right? So she's got 3 jobs.
Wow, nice.
She's 17. And I haven't made her do any of that. We didn't have to make her do any of that. She did it. And I think that's a direct thing because she got that work ethic from watching us. And I'm grateful for that. Like, I'm like, yeah, we showed her something, you know? Something that will stand her in good stead for the rest of her life. And the other one, the eldest, she's the same. She's training to be a paramedic in London at the moment. So she goes out in the ambulances in London. Horrible job. I don't know why she's doing it. Her stories are dreadful. And then she's got 2 jobs as well to keep herself going through that. So she's like grafting. On her birthday, she did a night shift, like in an old people's home. She went and got herself a job in this care home. Like, so she did a night shift in there on her 24th birthday. Like.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what I would say. To be a model, demonstrate, rather than pontificate. I think that's what they pick up on, really.
Wow. This has been I'd say like a profound conversation, you know, at these 2 different junctures.
You know? I'm grateful for this
me
conversation.
too.
It's brought me stuff, asking those questions of me. Yeah. It's been emotional as well.
Yeah, these 2 different junctures, you know, as I move over the precipice, and as you can see,
I'm excited for you, man.
You're looking backwards.
Do you know what though? We also live in a very different time now. There's a lot of stuff that's accessible now that wasn't when my kids were little. You know, that whole internet thing, the body of information, even this men's work idea, right? I mean, my youngest was born, I was 27. The internet had just about come about, but I didn't really use it or know that much about it. Do you know what I mean? We had emails and stuff. But I certainly didn't know anything about men's work or life coaching or therapy or anything. You know what I mean? I was still a naughty boy though, you know. And so yeah, I think I would love to be you getting into fatherhood now with all the wisdom that you've got, man. You're a different guy to the one I was when I entered into fatherhood. So like you're in a very your kids are going to be blessed with you, and also, you know, having all of that time and consideration. But I would also say to you, don't be hard on yourselves, right? Don't hold yourself to that massive high standard. You're going to fuck your kids up.
Yeah, I know.
You know, even you guys are going to do it, right? So just be mindful of that, man. Be kind to yourselves, you know, and like just be the beautiful people that you are. And demonstrate it, man. You guys walk your talk anyway, so it's gonna all be good.
Yeah. It's you know, as you said, the tools we have available now, you know, like the internet and all the things you can read, the books you can pick up, the podcasts you can listen to, you know, you can take so much information in. And I guess it's all information, right? You know, because as we know, it's the practice that we've done for years of, you know, communicating and being relaxed and calm in difficult situations. Like, and I feel like this is, as I kind of mentioned it to Orsa, I was like, this is like the ultimate test. It's the ultimate test of all this men's work, you know, of this capacity work. Like, can you hold the energy of like screaming child, stressed out mother, and stay calm and grounded and answer questions and take right action? You know, that's the ultimate test.
The answer to that is probably not all of the time, Dave.
Exactly.
And that's okay. Right? Yeah. That's okay, man. Like, there's going to be times where it just ain't happening. Like, you know, you're just going to lose it. You're just going to go, actually, do you know what? Fuck this. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm going out of it. Like, and that's all right, man. 80-20, innit? 80-20. As long as you do hold it down 80% of the time, you're all right, man.
Yeah. No, we talked about that, and because Orsa's got niece and nephews, and she was telling the story of when she lost her shit at one of her niece. And she, you know, apologized and was like, look, I'm really sorry. This is why I reacted like this, you know, and explained it. And I was like, you know, my parents would lose their shit and there was no explanation. There was no apology. Yeah. I was like, you know, we have a really different kind of ethic to that. And I just, yeah, you know, it's going to be, I'm not expecting it to be easy. Like you said, the 80-20, you know, there's going to be times where it all goes out the window because we're human beings and we make mistakes and we fuck people up and we don't mean to, and we try and do our best, and having the kind of grace and compassion to kind of see it that way in the moment, I think is going to be,
and really it's cool for your kids to see that too, right? That's a lesson in and of itself. That it's okay to lose your shit. It's okay not to be perfect, right? Do you know what I mean? It's okay to be real, man. But this is how we overcome it. This is what happens afterwards, right? We come back, we apologize, we explain ourselves, you know, we rebuild and we go again, and we tell each other that we love each other, right? You know, we don't leave it at that, you know, and that it's that same thing of where people say they don't want their kids to see them argue. It's like, actually, the kids should see you argue, but they should also see you make up, right? Like, because that shows how to have a healthy disagreement, how to have a healthy argument and still love each other. The arguments don't mean that you hate somebody, right? They just mean that some things get better of us, like, you know. So all of that is a demonstration of how to do things healthily, and like you guys are very well equipped to do that.
Exactly. Thank you, man. Yeah, really grateful for this conversation. Very much a conversation, and you know, we always forget, you know, we mentioned it, but, you know, Fidel also is an incredible coach and works with men and helps a lot of men who are fathers. So a lot of the men you work with are fathers at some level and moving through that journey. And he has a very good book about divorce, which was the first time we had a conversation about moving through that. And I guess, how can if there's a man, it's like, okay, I need this man's help. How do people find you? How do they come to work with you? What have you going on? You got any programs happening in kind of July, August time?
So at the moment, I'm only working with my one-to-one clients at the moment. That's the only offering I've got out there. I've kind of mothballed all my kind of group programs. I've got some evergreen products coming out soon. But I'm just focusing on the work I love doing the most, which is working one-to-one. And as you alluded to right at the beginning of this episode, I'm an old man, Dave. So you can mostly find me on Facebook, where the old people hang out. Not on Instagram, where all you young fellas do your business. All that funny daddy, all them photographs and reels and stuff. I don't know what any of it's about. I'm just over on Facebook telling my dad jokes. But yeah, that's the best place to find me, is on Facebook. It's my name, put in Fidel Beauhill. Come follow me. My men's group, the Modern Man Club. Yeah, my book is still out there, man. I still get messages from my book is selling all over the world, and I'm very grateful to the men that receive it, and that fills my heart. I get messages from the wives, the divorced wives of husbands who've read the book. So yeah, Divorce: A Modern Man's Guide is out there. It's on Audible now as well, and on Amazon. And I put that together because there just wasn't that sort of resource of how to help men get through divorce emotionally and mentally. It's not fluffy and wishy-washy. It's a real practical guide on how to lead your family through that, leaving it as little destruction as possible through one of life's most difficult events. And my main thing is to try and help guys avoid that when I work with them one-to-one. But, you know, I work with guys that are really on the precipice of that breakup, and I help them either save the marriage or work through that divorce process while still having a respectful relationship with their exes and whilst maintaining contact with their kids, because it's so imperative. A lot of guys lose contact with their children because they handle the divorce so badly, and they don't lead their partners end up leading the divorce. And if you do that, she will be in her masculine energy, she'll be in defense mode, and she'll be very protective, and that includes protecting herself and her kids from you, right? So if you take up that leadership position and you do it with love and compassion and kindness, that you stand a much higher chance of maintaining that relationship with your kids. So that ties in nicely with what we've been talking about, right? That being committed to your family and your kids and their mother, right? They need their mother, so be good to them, right, and treat them with respect. And no matter how much of an idiot she's being, like, I know I'm not defending them or anything, by the way, guys, any of you don't listen to it, but there are ways, right? And I'm sure if you listen to a lot of what David puts out there as well, masculine leadership is a worthwhile endeavor.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Fidel. Thank you for your wisdom. It's much appreciated. I've taken, notes. I'll be taking a lot of this in. They'll probably discuss a little bit also when we jump off. Listeners, listeners, this is the sort of episode you definitely do send to somebody, because there's a man out there, who is entering into fatherhood or soon to be entering into fatherhood. And this will definitely get his mind thinking about his own models and who he wants to be as a father and what's important. Or maybe there's a man, who is, as Fidel talks about there, is going through a divorce, who needs to see the importance of his commitment to his children and the commitment to the mother through the children as well. So feel free to share the love with someone out there who needs this. And I guess I finish up by going big thank you to Fidel, and a big thank you for you guys listening. And I guess in a few episodes' time, I'll be telling you that he's born. And I'll tell you about that. So probably tune in for two episodes' time, maybe 3 episodes' time to hear some of my reflections on that earlier stage, because I think I'll do an episode about that. But until then, I say ciao, ciao. Thank you for listening. I want to say a big thank you for listening. It's people like yourself that really help get the podcast out into the world. Especially if you're often sharing the episodes and the podcast with people that you feel just could do with listening, right? Can see a different way of being a man, maybe a different way of having dating lives and intimacy and relationships. So I want to say a big thank you. And if maybe after listening to this episode, you think, oh, there's someone actually who could really do with this, please share it with them, share the love. I'm really, really grateful. And if, you want to get in contact with me for any questions, or you want to talk about coaching or any working together, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram @theauthenticman_, or you can email me hello@theauthenticman.net. Thank you very much.